Ashe people, welcome back to another episode of My Unapologetic Perspective. This is the podcast where we give our point of view of controversial topics from my experience, Black history, and our knowledge as African Americans. Black history presently lives in us so we can continue to excel into the future. It's one thing to know Black history, it's another thing to take advantage of what the people in Black history did for you. I am your host, Martre Baker Stevens, and to the right of me is Shaquan Battle. And to the right of him is Jerome Battle.
What's up?
We appreciate all the love and support we've been getting on this podcast. I have a quick comment for the people who are in the comments on TikTok about when we're talking about the African American language. A lot of the people commented and said, well, African American language is American language, so it's ours too. That is completely untrue. So what the things you understand is that when we talk about African American language, when we talk about Ebonics and we talk about the way that we talk, we were forced to speak English. We didn't take your culture. You forced us into your culture. And within that culture, we created our own culture. So, no, this is not yours. This is still considered Black talk. This is still from the Black community. And as y'all always say that America is the melting pot, that we're all one. Well, it's mighty funny when it comes to Black culture. It's mighty funny when it comes to things that you want to take a benefit from, there we're one. So for all of you people out there that are in that comment saying that, I want to make sure that you go to your school board and start telling them to make it inclusive about Black history so your kids can be able to learn about Black history. I want you to go to those places and begin to advocate for more Black people to be in, to get promotion opportunities, to get more money, since we're all one. Follow those people in those comments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's it, folks.
Another important conversation to have today, and we touched on the last couple of episodes, but we want to go full into it today. Dad, I'll let you introduce it.
Yeah, we want to talk about progress. Has there been progress? Yes. Has there been progress? No. I really want to say hell no. Because if there had been progress, we probably wouldn't be having this podcast.
Right.
If there had been true, measurable progress, we probably wouldn't be doing this podcast. There'd probably be no need to do this podcast. There has not been progress, measurable progress. I'm going to give you an example. You would think since George Floyd that the number of Blacks being killed at the hands of police would have decreased. It has not. You would think that since the conviction of Derek Chauvin, that the number of Blacks being killed at the hands of police would have decreased. It has not. You would think since Kimberly Potter, you guys may remember Kimberly Potter, the officer who obviously shot a guy dead in his own apartment, or she mistaken it for her apartment. Since her conviction and sentencing, that the number of Blacks being killed by police would have decreased. It has not. In fact, it has increased. Not only has it increased, the number of police officers being charged has not increased. Obviously, the number of officers in terms of just the number of officers has increased from the past, mainly because of body cams and cell phone footage of individuals that are filming these things. But when we talk about police brutality against Blacks, especially unarmed Blacks, and I want to make sure that we differentiate between unarmed and armed, because there are some situations where Blacks are armed, but they're not posing an imminent threat to the police officers. So if I have a knife and I'm surrounded by 20 police officers with a gun, how can I hurt them? And I need people to understand this, because this is what's happening. Furthermore, you have cases where police are being called because the individual is having a mental issue, and they're acting out because of the mental issue. And when the cops come, they're treating it as a criminal issue, and they're being treated like a criminal and killed at the hands of police officers. And again, I want people to understand the word disproportionately. We're not saying this doesn't happen to whites. We're saying it happens to Blacks disproportionately. And this is a fact. This is not something that some Black person made up and made it popular. This is fact. And you can Google, and because you guys like to rely on Google, go to Google and you will see this is a fact. So when we talk about, has there been progress? Of course. In terms of certain freedoms, we're allowed to say certain things. That's why we're having this podcast. Where if we go back to the 50s and 60s, we probably couldn't say some of the things we're saying on open air like we are. So in that sense, yeah, there has been some progress. However, you can compare these beatings, these deaths, far beyond Rodney King. We can go back to the 30s. We can go back to the 40s and the 50s, where this was happening as part of integration, where people were fighting for the rights that we had. Some people seem to think that the Civil Rights Act of 1968 gave us something that we didn't have previously. We had it, and we were fighting to be able to practice it. So when we talk about progress, there's multiple points of this that we're going to get into. At least I know I am. And the first is the mindset, something we talked about before. The way that white America has positioned themselves, the government, the structure of the system, to be unequal against blacks. It's part of the mindset. This is all about design. And for me, that's part of the problem, is that this is the way that they think. And I'll go one step further before I let you guys jump in. When we talk about educating, when we talk about teaching people the true history, you have people like the governor down in Florida saying that, and even Virginia's governor, a matter of fact, let's use him as an example, saying that they don't want people to feel a certain way about what their ancestors did. They don't want them to feel like they are being punished for what their ancestors did. What that really means is we don't want white Americans to feel bad about slavery, but it's okay for black America to feel bad about slavery. So it's okay for them to teach that blacks were enslaved. It's just not okay to teach who enslaved them. So again, this is a great example of the mentality of white America. Now, you're going to have some people say, white people say, well, that's not a reflection of me and who I am. We're not talking about individuals. We're talking about a system of individuals that happen to be a majority of white Americans. This is the mindset of white America, which structured everything about this country, from the Constitution to the health system to financial advancement and gains for the people of this country. Everything about this country was devised and structured on white supremacy.
Go ahead.
I got a question. So after 50 years of protests, marches, all of these things, do y'all still think America is still a land of unequal opportunity?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Very much so.
Now you can you can put glitter over top of glue and make it look good. But ultimately, are there black millionaires? Yes. Are there people in successful positions that are black? Yes. Have we had a black president? Yes. We've had all of these things. But from a surface area, from the outside looking in, this looks like the land of free opportunity. But until you get into the core of everything, is when you begin to understand what's really going on. And when we go through this episode, you will understand why it's not as glamorous as other people may see. And this isn't just a 2023 thing. This is something they was doing back in the 60s. This is why Malcolm wanted to get the UN, the United Nations, involved. That's right. Because from what they were looking at as America as being this great place, land of opportunity, equal opportunity, the black people were saying it's not what you think it is. So this is where when you turn your television on, we want to show you black people getting sprayed with water
That's right.
hoses. We want to show you black people being lynched. We want to show you all of these things because you don't understand from the outside looking in what this really is. And I'll stick on Malcolm because most of the things that we call progress in this country takes on that quote that he has, of course, where the knife is 9 inches in your back, and if you take it out 6 inches, it's telling me that that's called progress. But what America has done a great job of is not just with that concept, is pretending that the knife doesn't even exist.
That's right.
You see people all the time talking about there's no racism in America, that America is not built on racism, that we don't have a systematic racism problem. You hear and see these things all the time. And as we go through this episode, of course, you'll understand why we're saying this. Just last year, lynching became a federal hate crime. So 2022.
That's right.
Ida B. Wells was talking about having a federal, having lynching become a federal crime back in the late 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
And just last year, was it considered to be a federal crime? Governor Northam from Virginia, before Youngkin came on, back in 2019, he talked about when he done his research with some college students, he found over 100 racist laws still on the law books. Now, they were unenforced, but they were still there.
Why?
Exactly.
That's right.
My daughter just told me about a story about, well, she tell me stories all the time about things that racist people say at school, at the middle school. I went to that middle school, and ain't nothing changed from back when I was there to today. Some of the same remarks and comments. When you look at the cases like the Scottsboro Boys or the Central Park Five, and see the tactics of law enforcement and the court system, and then you get to look on the news today. Every day on the news, there's an African American being exonerated after serving 10, 20, 50 years for something that they didn't do, or cases being overturned after decades serving. It makes me go back to the movie Life, even though Life is a comedy and very funny. It was very true. 2 African Americans being in a place to where they were subjected to into forced labor by doing absolutely nothing wrong.
That's right.
And it wasn't until later on, until the people realized that they were innocent. And they still didn't. They still had to escape. As you read Malcolm X, Dr. King, Marcus Garvey, Ida B. Wells, W.B. Du Bois, Ella Baker, Fannie Lou, Elijah Muhammad, as you read all of these people, read their quotes, James Baldwin, read their quotes. And a lot of their quotes still applies to today.
That's
Some
right.
of the same things that they were talking about back then still applies today. And it just shows you, as Dad said, that we've come a long way, but we have not come a long way. So a lot of those concepts and stuff are still here. And a lot of people take glue to stick things together, and then they put glitter over the top of it.
And you know, and they're openly biased. This is the thing that surprises me about people who question whether racism whether it still exists. Let me give you an example. You will hear them talk about don't travel to Mexico, don't travel to certain parts of Mexico for Americans. And they'll give you the reasons why. And most of the people who are being abducted and killed, outside of this last incident that most people know about, the victims were white. So they're trying to protect white America. And people can dispute this all day. I'm just going by the statistics and the facts, right? A lot of people don't know what's going on in Haiti right now. Right now, there's a lot of civil unrest in Haiti. And there's a lot of black people going to Haiti to visit family that are being kidnapped, murdered in Haiti. But you don't hear the governor of Florida telling people don't go to Haiti, right? You don't hear that. Why? There's blacks that's going there. It ain't a big deal. It's not a problem. I will repeat this, and I've said this on many podcasts. When we talk about gang violence, I remember in mid to late 80s, they had Ice-T on one of these talk shows. And the talk show host says, yeah, there are 25,000 gang members in central Los Angeles right now. And he said, yeah, they all got initiated last night. You know, gangs and gang violence had existed long before that episode. But what happened is a white girl got killed in Beverly Hills that was gang related, and instantly it becomes a problem. Don't tell me racism doesn't exist in America. So that was in the mid to late 80s. That still happens today. Let a little black girl go missing and find out how long it takes before it becomes an Amber Alert or that it becomes national news. If it ever becomes national news, don't tell me it doesn't exist. Don't deny the facts and don't pinpoint and say, well, that's one instance. How many I got to give you? How many I got to give you before you understand that this is real and it happens on a day-to-day basis? And here's the thing. You don't have to be black to know that racism exists. That's a fact. The thing is you don't see it as racism because it's normal to you. So it doesn't appear to be racism.
Absolutely.
I can keep going, brother.
Oh, you're good. You're good. I just want to bring some attention to a couple of things. Rasheem Carter was found dead in Mississippi. His mother believed that he was lynched and called on the local authorities to investigate it because he sent a text message to her and said that white men in trucks were trying to kill him. When they found his body, his head was severed from his rest of his body. His spinal cord separated. His body parts were scattered. And the officials said they had no reason to believe that there was foul play involved.
No suspicions.
Yeah.
It's not suspicious.
You had cases like Q1 Bobby Charles, who was reported missing in October 30th. He left home with a 17-year-old friend. And I guess the boy's mother, Janet Irvin, and her 17-year-old son, who were white, without the mother's permission. And the family had concerns, but they were dismissed. There was no Amber Alert put out. They kept chalking it off and said maybe he's at a ball game or something like that. And they ended up finding his body. Believe they found his body like in an open field. His face was very similar to what they would consider what Emmett Till's face looked like from the photograph. And what they said that it ended up saying that he got high off of marijuana and ended up drowning after he was hallucinating on weed. Later on, that Janet Irvin was ended up charged with contributing to the delinquency of a minor. But that just shows you the different type of cases that we go through. You know, in Alabama, Lakeith Smith was 15 years old. Him and his 3 friends were wrongly burglarizing homes. And what ended up happening was police ended up shooting his friend. And then when they took it to court, he was sentenced to 30 years for felony murder. And the judge said that he contributed to the death of his friend. Same day, same courtroom, same judge. Guy by the name of Wesley Phelps, 28 years old, a real adult, was given probation for grand theft auto that led to a car chase that killed his girlfriend. Same court case. He got probation. Same court, same judge. Little 15-year-old burglarizing houses, cop kills his friend. Versus a grown man still in the car, leading the cops on a car chase, killing his girlfriend. He gets probation.
Absolutely.
So when we look at cases like this, like cases like Kendrick Johnson rolled up in a gym mat, Lavina Johnson that we covered on here that apparently shot herself with her own rifle using her feet and she ain't had no shoes on while in the military. Cases like Darius Lester, Breonna Taylor, Donovan Lewis, Amir Locke, who were killed by police while sleeping in their own homes. You see these type of cases, and then you go back and you look at things like in 1963 with the Birmingham church bombing, killing 4 little girls. And then you look back at 2015 of Dylan Roof going into a church, killing 9 people. And you go back and you look at a case of Virgil Ware, who was just riding his bike and 3 white supremacist teenagers shot and killed them, and none of them did any time for it. And then you fast forward to Yusef Hawkins in the late 80s, 16 years old, going to see about a car, and 10 to 30 white youth jump him, kill him, shoot him and kill him. And only 2 of them do real time out of the 30.
That was in Brooklyn.
Yeah. From, you go back and you look at Emmett Till, when you get images of Tayvon Martin, when you begin to look at all of these things as it correlates from history, we have not come so far. When you look at all these cases and things, there are cases now in LA where they finding black people hanging from trees and people said it's a suicide.
Mm-hmm.
There are open cases where black families literally have to say, I don't think my child would do that. And they would have to do their own investigation just to get the police to say, okay, there may be foul play. You think that would happen if there was a white kid missing? There was a white kid killed? I don't think so. So you look at the lengths that black people have to go through just to get the attention of the media and law enforcement to be able to get involved in such things. We're having these problems. We were having these problems then. We're having these problems now. So back then it was actual lynchings. This now is police shootings. There's shootings that happen every day just because somebody's black. This is what we're dealing with.
You guys remember Jennifer Short?
Mm-mm.
Jennifer Short, a white child whose body was found from Henry County. The parents were found dead, and then a few days later they found the child's body in North Carolina. They still talk about this case today because the murderer was never found. And they do a motorcycle ride every year in lieu of Jennifer Short's murder. But what about all the black kids that you never hear about, never found, or if they are found, you never hear about investigation, nothing.
I just seen a statistic that says that Latino and black children or black women, black people altogether are least likely found of people that went missing.
That's right.
And that's least likely found because they're least likely to be investigated.
It blows me away because on the contrary, let me just say this. Black and Hispanic people are killed at a higher rate, far more than our counterparts. And people say, well, why is that? And we talk about being killed by police. But they're also stopped by the police that, at a higher rate than our counterparts. Yeah. So why wouldn't you believe that they're being killed by police at a higher rate? We're being pulled over at a higher rate. And for people that don't believe that that's systemic, how come it's the same in every state and every city across the United States? Because it's not isolated. Right. Remember, we talked about it being one individual or a couple of individuals doing similar things or having similar patterns. Well, how do those patterns play out in every city and every state across America? It's systemic.
We know it's true. Police actually go through courses or classes that talk about cultural diversity to understand not to target certain people.
That's right. And for me, when I really started thinking about this, and I don't remember the year, but it was in the 80s, there's a guy by the name of Bernard Getz. And you guys may or may not have heard this story. But in New York City, he got mugged getting on the train. So what he did is he went and got himself a gun and went back to that same train station and hoped
to be mugged.
And when some individuals approached him, he began shooting most of them in the back. Charged them, not guilty. Not guilty. For me, that was the start of seeing things like what we're seeing right now. Is that was evidence that there is a certain privilege that's awarded to white people that blacks didn't get. But on the flip side, it was also the opportunity for whites to legally kill black people. And then you see a rise of this happening. Thus, you get the Yusef Hawkins deal, and so many more. There's too many to even name. Yeah. We could spend this whole episode naming folks that were killed. We'd be here all day, name them, and we'll just be naming the ones we know about.
Yeah,
So obviously there's far more than what we know about. I didn't even realize until this was probably a few weeks ago when I was doing some research that after George Floyd was murdered, there was another guy murdered in Ohio during the same time. I think his name was Chase Brooks or something. I didn't hear about that. I didn't even hear about that. So that's one that flew under the radar because all the attention was on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be fooled, folks. Don't be fooled. We've said this on many podcasts. They will distract you while they're doing what they're doing, and you won't pay any attention to that. Juneteenth Day, I will always remember as something that they gave us, or they thought they was giving us, that we didn't even ask for.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest with you, means nothing other than how slow America is to react to things that are positive for Black people, because Juneteenth is about the last African Americans to find out that they were free, slow to react. And in the meantime, while they were doing that, they were busy passing voter suppression laws all across the country.
We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. And we are back. We're going to jump right back in. That's a few things I want to go through real quick. Because when we talk about things hasn't changed, let's just look at some different things real quick. Nyjah Holmes, the child's mother, reported that Amy Lee of her daycare taped her daughter's mouth shut because she was having a tantrum and the caretaker didn't want her to disturb the other children. She also had to file a report against the daycare because the daycare knew about it and didn't say anything about it. In Texas, mother outraged after her fourth grader was taped to a chair with the help of other students because he wouldn't sit still. And as they taped her son, her 10-year-old son, to the chair, other kids began to hit him in the face, hit him in the head. But these are a couple of things. In another school, in sixth grade elementary school in California, Black children received handmade cards with racist language. The drawings read, "You're my favorite monkey," and "To my favorite cotton picker." And their parents had pretty much pulled a lot of them out of the school until it felt safe, because these were students who were making these comments and promoted by the teachers. In South Carolina, they were trying to pass a law to be able to arrest students who were considered boisterous or obnoxious. A lot of these incidents where the Black students were being punished or suspended or expelled or kicked out of classes more than anybody else. So they wanted to make it an ability for the resource officers to actually arrest these kids. And for the people who don't understand why that's important, because when you begin to arrest these kids and you charge them, you get that on your record.
That's right. We talked about that.
And we talk about that because, and as you get that on your record, you're unable to vote. A lot of these things are leading up to what we call, and we know that Black people or Black children are treated as adults more than anybody else when it comes to the justice system. In Oregon Middle School, some students tied up a kid and made him relive George Floyd's last moments. As he was out in the hallway going to the bathroom, a couple of students grabbed him and act like they were police officers, pinned him down and put their knee on his neck and said that they wanted him to feel what George Floyd felt in his last moments. And this is a school that's predominantly white. In another school, Marissa Barnwell, who was a honor roll student, was walking to class to where a teacher ended up yanking her up because she refused to stand up to say the Pledge of Allegiance. And she said she hadn't said the Pledge of Allegiance for years. But the teacher physically assaulting her by putting his hands on her, said that she should be proud to live in this country and be proud to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. And the principal backed the teacher up, not the student. So when you look at the school system at all, as we go through all of these things, this is something that our kids have to deal with the school system. So as we talk about integration and those things within the school system, just having black people and white people sit at school desks together is not real integration, especially if you're not going to add in inclusion and diversity within the curriculum and within the social status within the school. So it's important that we begin to understand how we've come a long way, but we have not come a long way.
I was listening to a podcast, and September 19th, 2019. I think I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Kaya Roll, 6 years old, was arrested for throwing a temper tantrum in school. Because throwing a temper tantrum, she accidentally hit a teacher. And school resource officer comes down and zip ties her hands to the back and escorts her to the police car while she's screaming and crying that she don't want to get arrested, don't want to be put in a police car, and get to the jail, and they have to use a step stool to take the mugshot. But that just goes to show the difference between, because if that was a white kid, you think that would happen?
No.
Not at all. But they did expunge her record, but she has to live with that for the rest of her life.
Yeah, you already put that image in her head.
In North Carolina, which is, I think it's the third largest county in North Carolina. And of course, it houses the first HBCU in North Carolina and the largest in the United States. But they did something several years ago that I thought was interesting when we talk about zoning, because geography plays a huge part in segregation. And they had a all black or predominantly black school district where those kids really thrived. And with, I don't know what their standard of learning is in terms of ultimate testing, like here in Virginia it's called SOL. I don't know what they have in Carolina, but whatever it was, the kids in this school district, these black kids, were killing it to the point that they were outdoing the white counterparts. And they looked at the district, and even the school board was predominantly black. So what Guilford County did is Guilford County came in and got rid of all of the school board members, replaced them with white school board members. And they rezoned the school to separate those black kids and have them going to different schools so that school would no longer be the cream of the crop. And what that does is that divides funding. So all the schools that they was dispersed to had less funding than that one school had, that made them superior, so to speak, in terms of education to their counterparts. Even though they had the same resources, these kids excelled. But they fixed that shit. So when we talk about racism, don't tell me it don't exist. And we're not talking about 50 years ago. We're talking about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, yesterday. Mm-hmm. We're not talking about, in the 1920s, like some people may think we are. I want to bring up one more point. We kind of talked about it off air, but after I went home, I did a little more research. Jim Crow is resurrected in Mississippi. There's no doubt about it. And I'm going to give you a great example of what we mean. And again, this is recent. This is not 50 years ago. Bill 1020. I want people to Google Bill 1020. Passed in the State House in Mississippi. And what this is this is a bill to create a white-controlled district in an overwhelmingly black city with unelected official judges and prosecutors. Now, I'm going to read this because I don't want to fuck this up. I want you to know exactly what's happening. White representatives in the Mississippi House approved a bill, Bill 1020, to create a new district in Jackson, Mississippi, which is the capital, and it's predominantly black. That includes all of the majority white neighborhoods in Jackson, a capital city that is 83% black. This includes creating a criminal justice system for the district overseen by an all-white power base. Under House Bill 1020, the white conservative Chief Justice of the Mississippi Supreme Court would handpick the new district's 2 supervising judges, its prosecutors, and the public defenders would be chosen by the state white Republican Attorney General.
State takeover.
Here's the thing. The zone would be policed by an expanded Capitol Police Force led by the current white racist police chief and supervised by the state's white public safety commissioner.
And then have jurisdiction over that
over
town.
The blacks in the community because it's 83% black. So you have black Democrats try to oppose the bill. The white representatives left the floor while the blacks told them why this was racist and wrong. And then when it was time for the vote, them people came back in and voted, yeah, we want to pass the bill. They didn't even want to hear the argument from the black Democrats. This bill passed in the House. Passed. So, if this is not Jim Crow, it's not black codes, it's not slavery, but it has the same effect. It's segregation. It's more than segregation. This is negatively going to impact the black community in Jackson. But that's not even the most important part. I've said this on many podcasts before. It's like the shift rule in baseball, baby. You lay the rules, what can I get away with? Mm-hmm. This is going to be the first of many bills to come, not just in Mississippi.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys, I know I watched it because I like to know what's happening. Governor Youngkin is going to follow suit. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. It's already happened with CRT. Mm-hmm. Florida governor said we ain't teaching it. Youngkin said we ain't teaching it. Mm-hmm. Mississippi said we ain't teaching it. South Carolina said we ain't. Speaking of South Carolina, how pissed are they right now that Don Staley continues to have South Carolina playing? They hate that.
Yeah.
They hate that.
Yeah.
They were forced to take the Confederate flag down, last year? Mm-hmm. They got to hate this. But we continue to see how they hate towards blacks. And the word is right. They hate us so much that they want to take a predominantly black community and have it controlled by whites. Not elected. So here's the other thing. I just thought about this too. So your taxpayer dollars are going to pay these folks that you didn't even get to vote into position. You didn't even get to vote about it. Mm-hmm. And that's your representation? So they claim that the Revolutionary War was because of taxation without representation. What the fuck is this?
Right. That's one of the main reasons why I vote Democrat on most of the things is because when you look at history, one of the things that people like to talk about when it comes to racist views in the political arena is states' rights, right? So this is one of the things that they talked about when it came to slavery. This ain't about slavery. This is about states' rights. When it came to the Reconstruction period, the Compromise of 1877, we want the states' rights. Right. Well, now you look at what Mississippi is doing. This is not new. This was happening before with the water situation. The water situation in Jackson, the governor was not trying to help the black mayor in Mississippi. That's right. So this is a states' rights situation. So the things that we talk about in Black history, most of the time when Black people get justice or Black people are able to get things advanced, it is the federal government that is stepping in and allowing these things to happen. As we talked about the federal crime bill, as you talked about the federal task force that's going to come to missing Black people. So whenever you go back and look at history, it's the federal government that steps in, because these states' rights, especially these southern states like Florida, like South Carolina, like Mississippi, like Louisiana, are trying to do things and pass things and create their own law. And what states' rights really means in hindsight is we want to be able to do things the white way.
That's right.
Not the right way, the white way.
Right way.
Right? And that's one of the things that we deal with. And when you look at the justice system as a whole, a federal judge just actually dismissed a lawsuit filed by a real estate agent in Michigan, in Wyoming, Michigan. He was showing somebody one of his properties. And by showing somebody one of his properties, a neighbor called and said that somebody was breaking into properties around, and the cop comes in and puts his gun towards him, the person he was showing the property to, and his 15-year-old son. And our Ohio man who spent 21 years in prison for alleged crime that may not have even occurred.
That's right.
What ended up happening was the couple of the home didn't really give a good physical description of what they saw, the people that burglarized them. And when they actually did a lineup, they pointed this guy out, even though their physical description that they gave police wasn't even close to this. And they come to find out that a robbery may not even happen. And this guy was convicted and sentenced to 67 years. And did 21 years for something that he wasn't even a part of, or something that may not even happen. Jalen Williams, a native of Illinois, was found dead by his girlfriend's house. They said he froze to death. However, the 19-year-old family suspects foul play. There were two men in, I think might have been Mississippi too. Let's see. But the police deputies waterboarded him, put a pistol in one of their mouth and blew his tongue out, and waterboarded him for allegedly dating white women. These are just things that we go back and look at the uniformed officer who was pepper sprayed a few years ago and correlate that to how soldiers was treated in the Red Summer when they came back from war. There's been cases where banks have called police for people who have accounts there that's just Black people that's just trying to withdraw their money. They actually call the authorities. One of the people at one of the banks, the management, he had the guy in the office with the police officer and told the guy, hurry up and get him out of office before he steals something off my desk. This is something that we deal with within the banking system. So, we can go back and look at the history of, the black codes and vagrancy laws and convict leasing and subjugate that with mass incarceration. The 13th Amendment and those type of things. Yeah. So, and then you look at today with the mandatory minimums. So, we still are dealing with people who are doing long-term sentences from that stint that happened in the late 80s, early 90s. Harsher sentences for Black people for selling crack instead of powder cocaine. You know what I mean? Black youth were 8 times more likely than white youth to be tried as an adult. If you could, like I said, if you can get that felony on their record at an early time, especially when you talk about southern states, right. I think Alabama is one in particular that still lives by that. I think so many of the Black population is not able to vote just because they refuse to acknowledge that their ability to be able to register to vote with that felony on their record. But these are things that we if a Black person or white person each commit a crime, the Black person is more likely to be arrested, and once arrested, more likely to be convicted. We're convicted at 20 times more likely to be sentenced to jail time, and see sentences 20% longer than white people for the same crime. So when we talk about these things, like I said, these aren't just things that we come up with out of osmosis. These are things that when we look at the system, it's glue with glitter on it.
That's right.
Question. Are y'all more pessimistic or optimistic that in 5 years we will see progress?
More. You mean more progress?
Yeah,
more
progress.
measurable
Yeah.
progress. I'm inclined to believe we're going to see more measurable progress, and only if you have. And I know a lot of people don't agree with this, but I'll go back to when we talk about equalizers, things that can level the playing field, which is education, and getting more people in the political realm, getting more people to vote, and more people that understand our struggles being the ones that are running for office. I still say this is a prime example. What's happening in Mississippi right now is when you have people in office, they can make change. Mm-hmm. And without us having any representation or representation at the highest level, it's going to be hard to get change. When we talk about the successes of the civil rights movement, again, what Baker touched on is exactly right. What we were trying to do is get the federal government to force the states to adhere to the law, which is we had a right to register and a right to vote. This wasn't something we was asking for. The Civil Rights Bill of Rights Act of 1968 didn't give us the right to register and the right to vote. It forced the states to allow us to be able to do so. And then it provided us the avenue to be able to do it by making sure that law enforcement was upholding the federal law, right? So it didn't give us anything that we didn't already have. So what I think going forward is going to happen is because we are more woke now, we have people that are speaking out, and you have at the next level. So you have students, you have parents, and then you have legislators. If we can get more legislators that are talking about some of the things that are current, some of the things that we're looking for right now. I'm not talking about the NAACP of the 80s and the 90s, mm-hmm. Okay? Those agendas, they're still important, right. Okay? However, we have more important business right now that I think we need to turn our attention to, and I think the newer generation is going to help us with that.
I do not. I believe that what we are seeing today there's a new starting point. I believe Governor Desantis has a real chance of being the president of the United States. And I believe he's doing all of this and showing, like you said, what Trump did. He's showing his true colors and showing everybody else's true colors by doing so. I think he knows exactly what he's doing. I believe people like him and the people in the state of Mississippi, what they're doing is they're showing that there are other people that think like me, and I guarantee you they'll vote for me. And this is going to be the start of changes that we're going to see, because like I said, a lot of these things are states' rights. We've been seeing it for the past few years of what Texas have been doing with the school system. We have been seeing what Mississippi has been trying to do with the voter suppression. We've seen now what Florida is trying to do with just free speech. We're seeing that what Virginia is attempting to do. We're seeing all of these southern states show us their true colors. And I believe that it is going to have more rapid change because we're going to have pushback.
But you know what? I agree with that, but I think the ultimate goal is still going to be achieved. And here's why. This is something that Wabu said that I agree with. The more that they do to try to put us back to where we were, the more you're going to get black people to start thinking alike and uniting.
Yeah,
the last part, that phrase that you usually use from Malcolm X about the way we think. Mm-hmm. The last part of that is not only will we begin to think for ourselves, but we will begin to think alike amongst us, and we will unite. That's the last part of that phrase that I think a lot of people forget. So when you have white America doing what Governor Desantis is doing and what Donald Trump attempted to do, you're going to have more black people going, wait a minute, this ain't right. We need to do something. And once again, you're going to have black people start to unite like we did in the 60s. That's the biggest difference between the 60s and now is black people united. Mm-hmm. We all came together. Even people who didn't care about voting.
But even with that, when black people unite, then what? Like, how do you change a system just by uniting? So even with that, right? So we see what Mississippi is trying to do with the state takeover and appointed officials, which means I'm going to appoint who I want and your vote doesn't even matter, right? So now you take away the voting rights of the people, especially the black people, as we've always seen in history. So if you can't get people at the seat at the table, because now we want to appoint the table, not have people vote for the table, that'll change the landscape of what we're actually able to do. We don't control the school board. We don't control, of course, we don't have any but one black governor. Even now that we have black mayors, now you see the state trying to find a way to take over those type of towns that have black mayors. So now that we're starting to see this, like, I'm just looking at it like they're really setting themselves up to be able to have control, which is why I brought up the federal government earlier. As long as you continue to have states' rights, the more you're going to continue to have control over what black people do.
But you have states' rights because of representation. So again, if you can get more people that are going to be politicians, that are going to be on these school boards. I mean, we think. Let's
look at this. We know the way that especially conservatives do, which is you put puppets in those places. Well, you put black representation in those places that take on our ideologies.
That's true too. But there's ways around that too. Is that you still have, again, if you have people that think like-minded, you're not going to have puppets. So that's the thing. What I think that people like Governor Santos and even Governor Youngkin is doing now is going to make us start thinking more alike. And you're going to end up with less of those puppets and more people that are really pro-black being part of the school board. So when I look at the school board district and I look who's on the school board, and you say, well, how many black people ran? And then in most cases, none. And once we have people start thinking alike and start saying, if you want change, this is what has to happen, because you're going to want change because of the states' rights and the things that the states are going to be doing that are going to negatively impact black people negatively. You're going to have more blacks that are going to start, okay, wait a minute. Now we need to do something. And protesting is not going to get it.
Yeah, but even if you're living in a place like Bedford, let's say you ran for school board, especially somebody, let's just say somebody like me. I'm not going to get enough votes because a lot of black people are not going to vote for me just because they don't like this kind of talk. A lot of white people, of course, we live in a red community. You know what they're going to vote for. But even if you had one person that slipped through the cracks, they're still outnumbered in the votes on the school board.
Yeah, now I think it's going to change though. I really do. I'm optimistic it's going to change. When I listen to, because here's the other thing. We think we sit on this podcast and we're fearless. We're nothing compared to the youth that I hear talking about racism and inequality and injustice. We're nothing compared to them. They're fearless. I think the fearlessness of the younger generation is going to push through. I believe that. I believe, 20 years, people think the critical race theory is something new. It's not. But you're just hearing about it. Why? Not because of the older generation. It's because of that fearless younger generation. I think they're going to push through. I think at some point, you've had enough. We've had enough. We can't take it anymore. We're going to start standing up. That's what happened in the civil rights movement, is that you started having black people say, damn it, enough is enough. We're not taking it anymore. It's going to happen. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to see it, but I do think that it's going to happen.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Now, I'm going off, you said 5 years. I just don't see it in 5. I still think you'll see some measurable progress. And that doesn't mean that you're not going to see some things that don't change or get worse. I'm not saying that. But do I think that you're going to see? Because if we look at it in totality, let's look at, even though it's black officers being arrested, we do see more officers being arrested for brutality against unarmed blacks. So that's measurable, right? We can name the officers. Yeah, they are black, but they still broke the law. Right? So it has to start somewhere. Do I hate the fact that it got to start with the black officers? What about all the white officers before them? We can even go back to the incident with the guy in Baltimore, Maryland, where he was basically limp when they put his body in the back of the paddy wagon. That was the first instance where immediately officers were reprimanded, but they all were black. Now, none of them got found guilty because I don't even think any of them ever went to court, but that was the start. Measurable progress. It has to start somewhere. I'll let you close.
That's all I got. No, I want to. This is something that I heard Deion Sanders say, and I mentioned on his podcast before. And I need every black person to think about this when you're talking about being outspoken, because the one thing that I know about when you talk about blacks and injustice in America, and you're saying that, for the most part, America was founded on white supremacy. Everything about the structure of the system was based on white supremacy. Black people tend to shy away from those kind of conversations. I will say this. If you understand and believe what we're talking about on this podcast, just through history and the things that you see that's going on today, I will say this: speak with confidence, and what Deion Sanders said, this is game, right? Get your camera phones out. This is game. Don't let my confidence, right, fuck with your insecurities. Mm-hmm. Because what happens is we're so concerned with making white America feel uncomfortable that we're willing to endure what we're getting. Mm-hmm. We have to stop that. We've been uncomfortable ever since we were brought into this country as enslaved Africans, because we know we were here long before that. But as enslaved Africans, we've been taught to feel inferior and to deal with whatever happens, mm-hmm. right? Now we don't want white America to feel insecure. We don't want white America to feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Why? Why do we care so much about how they feel and less about how we feel? We need to stop. We need to stop. We need to make white America feel uncomfortable. Make them think about their insecurities, mm-hmm. because they're only secure because we allow them to be. We need to stop that.
Absolutely. We love y'all. Peace.